Hello class, welcome to your second virtual sub day. Thank you for doing so good last week at this, and hopefully today I'll go just as well. As a reminder, there is no Google Meet today, so you should be watching this short video, and then you need to complete and submit your 2-6 day 2 Pearson practice by the end of your class period. If you don't like your score on that, you're just going to still submit it, and then you can go back to it later, sometime before November 4th, that's next Wednesday, to improve your points. But it does need to be submitted today at the end of the hour just because of attendance. Okay, so just a quick review of what you looked at in the video. You started learning about this thing called the discriminant, and you learned that it's a subset of the quadratic formula. In fact, it's that messiest part, the b squared minus 4ac. So that part right there, not taking the square root of it, just the b squared minus 4ac, the part under the radical, is called the discriminant. So you want to know that term. But what the discriminant does for us is it tells us how many solutions. Okay, so the biggest thing with the discriminant is if you do that part first, you'll know how many answers you have. If b squared minus 4ac is a positive number, so greater than 0, that's when you have two real solutions. If b squared minus 4ac, there we go, equals 0, that's when you have one real solution. Those are the two situations we've talked about most. But in this chapter, in section 4, remember we introduced that idea of I? That's what happens when b squared minus 4ac is less than 0. When you get a negative number, you're taking the square root of a negative. So that should make sense because we learned that anytime it's the square root of a negative, that's going to give us an I. So when you have a square root of b squared minus 4ac, if that b squared minus 4ac is negative, we actually ended up with two non-real solutions. All right, so or two imaginaries. These could also be called roots, so we could replace the word solution with roots. All right, so if you're asked to use the determinant to describe the types of solutions, we're just using this idea. You're just saying two real, one real, or two non-real solutions. In order to do that, though, the first key is you must set it equal to 0 first. So you can see that this quadratic is equal to -4. Before I can do the discriminant, I have to add 4 to both sides. That would be a common mistake. So -9x squared minus 6x minus 1 equals 0. And again, as soon as I'm asked just to find the types of solutions, I need to know that that is using the discriminant. So I'm going to do b squared minus 4ac. I go back, and I'll become substitution. My a is going to go in here. Okay, so I identify a as -9, which means I'm plugging -9 in for the a. My b is going to be -6, so that's going to go in here. There. So b is -6, so that's going to give me -6. Make sure, especially if it's a negative, when you're squaring it, you put it in parentheses. So it's -6. And last but not least, my c value is going to be -1. Okay, so I find my c is -1, and I plug that in here. Now I can't forget to just bring down the minus the 4, and this is all multiplication. Now I did show you in the video, I strongly encourage you to take your fancy calculators and type all this in one shot. -6 squared minus 4, parenthesis, -9, parenthesis, -1, parenthesis. Reason being is because if you do it step by step, so many students make a mistake with this last part. But I'm going to show it one time. So -6 squared, I would do that first. That's positive 36. But we have to think about this as a negative times a negative times a negative. So 3 negatives times each other would actually be negative. And then 4 times 9 is 36. So I get 0. Okay, so again, if students who try to do this step by step like I did here, make many mistakes on whether this is plus or minus. That's the most common mistake I see with people doing the discriminant. So I do encourage you just to type this into your calculator. But that's where you have to get good at using that online graphing calculator, or if you have a scientific calculator, that would work too. All right, but I got 0, which means if I go back to this top part, anytime I get 0, that's this scenario where it means I have one real solution. So this is actually just the answer to the problem. All the other work was just for that. Okay, so let's do another one here. In this case, I would subtract 8 first. Remember, we have to get it equal to 0. I get 2x squared plus 3x plus 3 equals 0. I go to find the discriminant. I identify A, B, and C. A is 2, B is 3, C is 3 as well. So I do b squared, which is 3 squared, minus 4. A is 2, C is 3. So usually that's how I write it out. Now, technically, because one of these three numbers is negative, it would be minus. So I end up with 9 minus 8 times 3 is 24. Okay, so I end up with negative 15. But again, I would just type all this into my calculator. I circled that. I probably shouldn't have because I ended up with a negative. That means my actual answer is that I have 2 imaginary, or it might say non-real. Okay, so we have to understand different languages, especially dealing with Pearson. 2 non-real solutions. All right, if you're getting the hang of it, you can just watch this last one. If you want to practice on your own, you can pause it and try it. But in the last one, you would add 10. I get negative 6x squared plus x plus 5 equals 0. A is negative 6, B is 1, C is 5. B squared minus 4ac helps me determine how many solutions. I get 1 squared minus 4 times negative 6 times 5. Because 2 of these are negative, that will be half. But I typed all that in, and I got 121. So I get a positive number for this, which means I have 2 real solutions. Now again, just a tip, and this would be on all of them, it might say 2 real roots. Okay, so they use the word solution or roots interchangeably. I do think some of your Pearson practice has roots instead of solutions, so just so you see that. All right, last but not least, this is a little bit higher level thinking problem, and you do want to understand how to do this. Okay, so in this case, it says what values of k will cause 2x squared plus kx plus 2 to equal to 0 to have one real solution. In order to solve this, we know that to have one real solution, that's when b squared minus 4ac must equal 0, right? So we're using this idea of the discriminant, but we actually have to identify which part of the discriminant. It's when it's equal to 0. And now we're going to substitute a, b, and c, but in this case, a is 2. B, the problem is k. That's what I'm solving for, and c is also 2. Okay, so the variable in this case is the k that we're solving for. So when I go to plug it in, I actually have k squared minus 4 times a is 2 times c is 2 equals 0. So we have to understand that this is the setup we want. We still use substitution, but now we just solve algebraically. So this time I get k squared, 4 times 2 is 16. So minus 16 equals 0. I add 16 to both sides. I get to k squared equals 16, and now we've done this next step a few different times. Remember to solve for a square, or to get rid of a square, I square root, which means k equals, but to square root 16, remember I'm thinking of what two numbers multiply together to get 16. Well, I can do 4 times 4, that gives me 16. And I can also do negative 4 times negative 4. Okay, so my answers are 4 and negative 4. Another way to write the same solution, and Pearson will accept both, you do have the plus minus symbol in the Pearson bar. You could type it in like that. Both of these would be acceptable. Okay, but when you're asked to find how they find one real solution, you need to use this part of the discriminant, set it equal to 0, substitute what you know, and then solve for the variable. All right, so that's all I have for a recap today. Again, your job now is to work on the 2-6 day 2 Pearson practice, but you must submit at end of class today, no matter where you're at. You need to work on it. Don't just open it and not do anything, but get as far as you can. If you want to redo it for points, by Wednesday 11/4 for a better score. Okay, so if you don't do well on it, you can redo it, but you need to submit it today for full credit. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys online tomorrow. Tomorrow online, you guys will have a Pearson lesson quiz, and then I'll see you live on Thursday. Thanks.